Hey Stranger Things fans, I return to the Upside Down World to Hawkins, Indiana for the latest Stranger Things 3 review. So this is going to be my review of Season 3, well it's Stranger Things 3, Episode 6, Chapter 6. I haven't done the full hog for a while. The episode is called it's E, sorry, I'm fucking up already. The episode is called E Plumbus Lurum. I've probably mispronounced that, but screw it anyway. So latest episode and 2 more to go after this in the season, and 2 more till I'm up to date, which is very exciting. And once again, I'm enjoying this rewatch a lot, and this is another really strong episode. It's another episode that gets a really good balance between like comedy, drama, some good character beats, but also some really full-on and intense genre type moments, some really great horror moments, some very tense scenes, psychological scenes, some really distressing scenes, particularly at the end of the episode. So this is another quite meaty episode to talk about as things slowly come together, but very, very good stuff again. You know what? I'm actually going to start with the Steve Robin sort of side of the plot, just because there's something to be said for that in this episode. And I think Steve has one of his strongest episodes, and Robin definitely has the strongest episode. Now, before I get into that plot, I'll just say then, this episode is set over the 4th of July, which is very important to the episode because the sleazy mayor played by Kelly Elms is putting on like a fair for like the locals. So this is once again part of his big sort of venture. And what's perfect about this whole thing is then it's once again showing up his desperation to mask like what's going on beneath the surface, and his whole setup with like the Russians and what's going on there, and he's trying to mask and hide it with this, typical image of like sweet American pie, American family values, and just give everyone a good time at the fairground. And of course it's another way for him to make a bit of extra money as well. So that's become a theme of this season, and it's something I really appreciate. But there is a funny scene involving that, because it's confirmed in this one that he's like working with the Russians, and he's working with Terminator Guy. We see them together, and Terminator Guy wants Hopper, like he's really frustrated. He wants the mayor to do something, and the mayor is like demeaning Hopper, so don't worry, as soon as he pops up we'll notice him, like an alert will pop up. And he's a moron at the end of the day, but he's also like really demeaning towards like Terminator Guy, as I'll call him, because I can't remember his name. So I just love the scene of him, like Terminator Guy, bouncing this skinny mare off, because they're inside one of those domes that you get at fairgrounds. It's obviously early in the day as they're setting up, but you've got the fair has already started, so you've got people outside, and they just hear and can see like the visual of like the mayor being bounced off the dome, like the 4 walls, and at one point one of the walls like sort of comes a little bit unattached. So just seeing that and their reaction on the outside is really funny. But this whole setting of the fair becomes like a backdrop for the episode in general as we see things unfold, because it definitely connects and is relevant to a lot of the stuff going on with the characters. So as I said, Steve I'll talk about, because the sort of thing we left off with them in the last episode was when they broke into the control center. Steve decked the control room guy, but at the start of this episode basically the whole army come running in. They start chasing the kids, and Steve and Robin, as like the older pair, they actually like sacrifice themselves. They allow themselves to be caught, and it allows Dustin and Erica to escape through the vent, and we get like this scene of them going down this elevator shaft. And I'll talk about that scene quickly because that's a really cute, funny scene with those two, because Dustin takes like great delight in proving that Erica's actually a nerd. He like picks up on her calculating how long they'll take to escape at the current rate they're going, which is really funny. So he points out that's a nerd thing, and then he starts listing things that make her a nerd, and at one point he mentions My Little Pony, and it's really funny him just like proving to Erica then the whole obsession with My Little Pony makes her a nerd. But it's a cute scene because he actually means it in a nice way. He ends the scene by saying, "Welcome to the club, we're all nerds." But it's a good, like, cool small arc where they decide eventually to turn around and go and help Steve and Robin. So I'll talk about Steve and Robin because they're questioned, they're tortured by the Russians, and this is where it really juggles like comedy with like more serious stuff quite well, because Steve, which is sort of becoming a character thing for him, takes one hell of a slacking. He gets beaten up rotten, yet he doesn't give away any information, and he's partly telling the truth because the Russians assume that they're working for someone, so that like the head guy is questioning, who do you work for, and Steve says the name of the ice cream parlor, but it's just really impressive that Steve just keeps taking these blows and how he won't sort of give anyone up. And later on, they sort of tie them up together. They drug them, which is quite humorous. And they bring in like the heavy guns with this guy with like utensils to try and torture information out them. But the important stuff is the character drama with Steve and Robin, where we really get a sense of their chemistry. Now, we'd seen it anyway here and there, some banter, but this is the first extended like scene of them together, and it's just so well played with them tied back to back on this chair. At one point they like try and nudge the chair towards the door, hoping they can get the door open, but the chair falls before like they can make the door, and it's Robin is very hysterical, but she just starts talking about how they've got all this history together at school, but how really Steve didn't know it because he didn't notice her so much. He was the quote unquote cool kid, and how she sat behind him every day for years in the same class, and how he didn't notice, but how it didn't matter because she was so obsessed with him. And it's a nice conversation back and forth because Steve says, if it means anything, being cool isn't all it's cracked up to be. And they just have this nice reminiscent sort of conversation, and it's the sort of conversation they have a lot in like the sort of movies, TVs, where it's like an adventure type thing, and it looks like the characters potentially might not make it out alive, and obviously they're in that sort of place where they're maybe starting to wonder if they will survive. So in that context, even though we're as audience we're probably pretty sure they will, in that context it sort of adds another layer to what they're saying. But it's a really beautiful scene, and as I said, it really shows off their chemistry, and you do get a good sort of payoff to it because, Dustin, because in another scene with Erica, like she's come across like this particular weapon that the Russians have. I can't remember how they come across it, but they discover it somehow, and she gives it to Dustin, and it's like this big sort of catapult type thing, this big like almost like laser type thing on the end, but it's like a stun type weapon. And Dustin, out of nowhere, just when things are getting like intense, once again, because someone like triggers the alarm and the Russians all like scatter out of the room, and Dustin runs in and because he's got this weapon, he just takes out. And Steve's like, yay, Henderson, I knew you'd come through. So that's, once again, that's a great like comedic payoff, because like just a minute later to the Russian, he'd been telling him about like Dustin Henderson, and just almost making this threat that he'll make you sorry, he'll make you pay. And obviously it's just a front. He doesn't actually expect Dustin to come bursting through the door to save them. So it's just one of these great little payoffs, which actually you don't see coming. Even though you see like Erica and Dustin with the weapon, you probably know they're maybe going to use it. But anyway, it's a good payoff. Then they actually turn around and come back and help them, and it's a fun like comedic touch. Then Steve, not expecting Dustin to come back, actually bigged him up like moments later. So the bromance lives on, and it's as glorious as ever. So that's that stuff. I'll switch to the Hopper, Joyce, Alexei stuff, and some of the best comedy in the episode actually comes from this side of the plot, because they're at UFO guy's house, and they're obviously using him to get information from Alexei about the technology, about the power grid and the power cuts, what's going on with that side. But Alexei, of course, has got hooked on the slush puppies, and he wants a slush puppy before he'll talk. So Hopper comes back from Burger King, bit of product placement there, and he brings Alexei a slushie, but I think it's a strawberry one, and Alexei wanted cherry, and so you get this really funny scene of him refusing to talk unless he gets a cherry one, and Hopper tries to say they were out of cherry, or just have to settle for this. And he's really started to get agitated in the scene. Joyce trying to calm him down, saying this isn't the best way. UFO guy is sort of having a fun time in the middle, because, yeah, Hopper's getting all frustrated. Alexei is, like, saying stuff back in Russian. So, but it actually builds to, like, this really funny sort of payoff scene where, like, Hopper throws Alexei out, in frustration. Like, he roughs him up in typical Hopper way, chucks him outside, and he's telling Joyce and UFO guy then he'll come around, because Hopper's whole thing is, like, he's scared, not of us, but of the Russians, of what they'll do to him if he returns to them unscathed, and, yeah, they won't trust him. So that's Hopper's whole pitch. And the funny payoff is when Alexei actually starts up Hopper's car and, is threatening to drive. And don't think that I didn't notice the cool 80s movie reference here, because the stereo of the car starts up and it's the Pointer Sisters, and it's the song they use in Beverly Hills Cop from the opening. So that's deliberate. That's clearly, Pointer Sisters 80s group anyway, but it being used in Beverly Hills Cop is just perfect wing, and it adds to how funny the scene is, because Joyce and the other guy perks up, and UFO guy's like, I think he's starting up your car, and Hopper all along is trying to keep this cool demeanour where he's like, he won't go anywhere. And I think what's funny is, I think even Hopper's starting to sweat and can't be quite certain, but in the end it works out that way. Like, Alexei starts the car, he tries to drive away, he sort of hits like the wall, and he comes back in, and it turns out he's not going to run away. But I think Hopper at least was sweating, then, oh my god, maybe I've blown this. And what's funny is Alexei comes in and says something, and UFO guy translates it as, well, I like strawberry too, so strawberry slushy will do. So eventually they get down to tactics, and it's revealed from Alexei then the Russians are using all this power around town and the power grid as a way to start up a generator and to open up a gate. But he also reveals then it's an assisting gate, like to another dimension, which has already been opened before. So that means the gate from season 2. And this immediately gets Joyce panicking about the kids, because she comes to the conclusion that they're probably located quite near this gate. And she works out, which is pretty simple deduction, then that they could be target for these things. So you get another quite light-hearted scene where Hopper, he actually calls, I forget his name now, but the Paul Raisin guy, Owens from season 2, and he leaves like a cryptic message for him to like meet them, and Joyce feels that then he's not being direct enough, so she calls back and leaves a much more direct message. Like, she's still talking in code, so she doesn't give away who she is. But it's just one of those classic Joyce moments where she's like, no, the kids are in danger, or they're potentially at risk. I'm going to be straight and direct, and I'm going to tell him what's what. And it's one of these like stand forward, like Winona Ryder moments where she actually absolutely nails it. So that's the thing, and that's the thing now that they're gonna go and to where this gate is and the location, which is gonna be the fairground. So moving over to the 11 and the other side of the plot, because I think what I love about the reveal in this episode and the direction it goes in is just how personal you find out this stuff is. And it's personal basically because the Mind Flayers, they want revenge for what happened in season 2. So they are targeting the people involved, and that's 11 for one, but also the rest of the gang. And things get very intense, because obviously we have the scene in the hospital where the two creatures have like basically molded into one massive creature. So we're going sort of full blown like disaster movie, like big monster type movie. We've got the lights once again flickering in the hospital, and eventually things are getting tense for like Jonathan and Nancy, because it goes after them both, and eventually it's Elle who comes to the rescue, not surprisingly, and she uses her powers. And this is a bit, I think people might nitpick or complain, and it's a bit over the top, it's a bit dramatic, it's a bit, big blockbuster feel. But I think because we're so invested in the characters and because the scene is really tense, then it sort of gets away with it. But later on, things really go places, because they have this idea. Then Al tries to tap into Billy's mind, because they've obviously worked out what Billy is. And there's this good visual actually of her, because she's doing the whole mind warp thing, and she's just got all these tissues with blood on the floor. And one touch I really like in the episode is Mike's concern for 11, because he starts talking about how this is too dangerous, we should find a better way. And Max is like sort of hitting back at him and saying, she doesn't trust you, that's why she dumped your ass, you can't be trusted, and just trust her. And obviously the rest are on her side. Like even Nancy says, because there's a funny line about, she dumped you, because it's the first time Nancy has heard it. But even Nancy is like supporting this idea. It's the only like solution. And they work out through what Eleven discovers, then Billy is staying in, and they sort of say this is unusual for him to stay in on the 4th of July. So they sort of cotton on to this has to be a trap. The creatures are setting us up. So they decide as a group then the only sort of way forward, the best strategy, is for Al to tap into Billy's mind to actually find out what's going on, what the source is. But I do like it as a character thing for Mike. Then he is so concerned, he's so worried, and says if things get too much at any point, then just come out of it. Don't put yourself at harm. And it's a good, once again, mini arc for him, because earlier on in the season you could maybe argue that he was being a little bit of a jerk, although I'm kind of sympathetic with him in the scene where, because Max reveals that the now was like, oh no, it's Mike, because he already knew about it, so he reveals, because when they're talking about Al and what's good use of her power, and he sort of throws a comment back at Max where it's like, yeah, you can really talk considering you had her using it to like spy on us. And Lucas then reacts because he didn't know, so it's really funny. And yeah, so Mike's like, what if I was having a big like wee or poo then? And Mac's like, but you wasn't. So it's something you think of, but it's a good character sort of like thing for Mike. Then he's gone from maybe being a little bit douchey to Al to actually caring. This scene sort of proves that he legitimately cares about her, and they legitimately kind of, I mean, not officially get back together, but yeah, it's sort of they're on solid ground again. And it's touching to see that then he actually cares about her and worries about her, as I'm sure they do as a group. But yeah, from here things really go places, because Al like tries to get inside Billy's head, and you have like this really long dramatic visual sort of like scene where it does get very kind of psychedelic and a bit like almost a David Lynch type scene. I guess if Stranger Things did Lynch type scenes, obviously it's not as full on as that or as stylish, but it's a very intense scene. And when she sort of gets implanted and she ends up on this random beach, and it just looks beautiful the way this beach and that is shot, but you're wondering what's going on. And she sees like a little boy when he's younger. Well, first of all, she sees like a blonde-haired woman on the beach, and she's looking at Al, and then a little boy comes running, and I figured out that was probably going to be Billy, and it looks like this is his mother, who I think it was mentioned in season 2 then that they lost her, like she died, or maybe then they just split up. But so it's sort of a crucial scene, Billy and this mother, his mother on the beach, and Al just experiences all this stuff in Billy's mind from his past. So stuff like he did live in an abusive household. You hear like the father like shouting and screaming at the mother. You hear him being abusive, and just all this stuff, which once again paints a clear picture of why Billy like has turned out how he has up to a point. We also see him having his first meeting with Max, of course. Then she's adopted, like so. Just goes through all this stuff, and eventually, she sort of gets to the root of it, and to the source of how personal this whole thing is, and that it's personal for the creatures. But we find out eventually, then the source is this energy factory, this sort of shut down. It's like a steel disposition place. Like Al gets like a clue from what Billy is saying in the dream, and or in the mind section and what she witnesses. And yeah, so Jonathan looks it up and finds the place, so they know that's where they have to head. But Billy turns the tables. Billy catches her in the dream. He grabs onto her arm, and for a long time Al is trapped in the dream or in Billy's mind, and it's getting very intense. And Billy does this whole monologue about how, and so he's sort of speaking on the behalf of the mind flayers. He's saying, we're gonna end you, and then we're gonna end your friends and everyone you know. And it's just this thing where he's talking about, this has been the plan from the start. We set up this structure, we built this structure, and this is our plan. And it's really intimidating because the actor who plays Billy is really imposing when he wants to be. He's got a real presence, and he knows how to be very intimidating, which is why it's sort of perfect. Then the direction of the character in this season is then he has been taken over and possessed by these things. Yeah, he's very as I said, scary, intimidating in this scene, and he just talks through this whole thing, and it's just got this sense of dread the way he's talking about, yeah, this is the plan, we're gonna end you, we're gonna end your friends, we're gonna end almost this whole town. And it just brings it back around to this setup of this fun fair, of this more of America, and of how it's all been set up, and the purpose of it is revenge. The purpose of it is to use it as a base for things to be developed from. And it's this sort of orchestrated type plan, which is sort of next level for anthology. I think Al finally escapes, and we end with this imagery of sunsets and the dawn coming in, and the monster, the massive monster, appearing. So, wow, yeah, intense stuff once again. It's quite an intense ending, because as I said, there's a lot of comedy in the episode, a lot of fun, some good character stuff. But once again, it proved to be a very edge of your seat episode with some good mythology and some good horror scenes. So, really strong ending. I really like the way this season is coming around with, as I said, the mythology, and also with the world building and the kind of arc of the season. So another strong episode. That's Stranger Things 3 Chapter 6. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, share me out on social media, and don't forget, it's not long now till the new season, Stranger Things 4. It hits at the end of May, and I will be up to date and prepared for it. So look out for more Stranger Things soon.